If you detect any awkwardness in my movements and infelicities in my conduct, I will offer the explanation that I never presided at a meeting of any kind before in my life, and that I do find it out of my line. I supposed I could do anything anybody else could, but I recognize that experience helps, and I do feel the lack of that experience. I don't feel as graceful and easy as I ought to be in order to impress an audience. I shall not pretend that I know how to umpire a meeting like this, and I shall just take the humble place of the Essex Band. Some 25 years ago, there was a great gathering in a New England town. There were orators and singers and all sorts of things. It was really an extraordinary occasion. The little local paper went into ecstasies in trying to do justice to it and in praising the speakers, the militia companies, the bands, and everything else. Toward the end, the writer ran out of adjectives and phrases of glorification and then found that he had one band left over. He had to say something about it, so he simply added, "The Essex Band done the best it could." I am the Essex Band of this occasion, but I'll do the best I can with good intentions. I've got all the documents of the objects of this association in this meeting and a lot of statistics, but I never could do anything with figures. The multiplication table is the only mathematics I know, and as soon as I get up to 9 times 7, I don't know, 84, I think it is. I can't even figure on the name of the society. It is so long. I would write it out for you to take home with you, but I can't spell it, and Andrew Carnegie is somewhere down in Virginia. This association, which is in the hands of very energetic and capable persons who will surely push it to success, has for its purpose to search out all the blind and find work for them to do so that they can earn their own bread. Now, it is dismal enough to be blind. It is dreary life at best. But it is a life that can be largely ameliorated if we can find something for them to do with their hands and to relieve them of the sense that they subsist on charity, and often reluctant charity. It is the only way we can turn their night into day and give them happy hearts. Most of these sufferers have seen the light and know how to miss it, and it is for us to relieve their dreary lives by teaching them the many profitable industries they can pursue. That association from which this draws its birth in Cambridge, Massachusetts, has taught its blind to make many things. They make them better than most people and more honest than people who have the use of their eyes. The goods they make are readily saleable, people like them, and so they are supporting themselves, and it is a matter of cheer. They pass their time down not too irksomely as they formerly did. What this association needs and wants is $15,000. The figures are set down and what the money is for, and there is no graft in it or I wouldn't be here. And they hope to beguile that out of your pockets, and you will find affixed to the program an opportunity, that little blank which you will fill out and promise so much money now or tomorrow or sometime. Then there is another opportunity which is still better, and that is that you shall subscribe an annual sum. I have invented a good many useful things in my time, but never anything better than that of getting money out of people who don't want to part with it. It is always for good objects, of course. This is the plan. When you call upon a person to contribute to a great and good object and you think he should furnish about $1,000, he disappoints you as like as not. Much the best way to work him to supply that $1,000 is to split it into parts and contribute, say, $100 a year or $50 or whatever the sum may be. Let him contribute $10 or $20 a year. He doesn't feel that, but He does feel it when you call upon him to contribute a large amount. When you get used to it, you would rather contribute than borrow money. I tried it in Helen Keller's case. Mr. Hutton wrote me in 1896 or 1897 when I was in London and said, "The gentleman who has been so liberal in taking care of Helen Keller has died without making provision for her in his will, and now they don't know what to do." They were proposing to raise a fund, and he thought $50,000 enough to furnish an income of $2,400 or $2,500 a year for the support of that wonderful girl and her wonderful teacher, Miss Sullivan, now Mrs. Macy. I wrote to Mr. Hutton and said, "Go on, get up your fund. It will be slow, but if you want quick work, I propose this system. The system I speak of asking people to contribute such and such a sum from year to year and drop out whenever they please. And he would find there wouldn't be any difficulty. People wouldn't feel the burden of it." And he wrote back saying that he had raised the $2,400 a year indefinitely by that system in a single afternoon. We would like to do something just like that tonight. We will take as many checks as you care to give. You can leave your donations in the big room outside. Now, I want you who have sight to know what it means, what a calamity it is to be blind, to be in the dark. I know what it is to be blind. I was blind once. I shall never forget that experience. I have been as blind as anybody ever was for 3 or 4 hours. And the sufferings that I endured and the mishaps and the accidents that are burning in my memory make my sympathy rise when I feel for the blind and always shall feel. It occurred after an excursion from Heidelberg to a medieval town about 20 miles away. I took a clergyman along with me, the Reverend Joseph Twitchell of Hartford, who is still among the living despite that fact. I always like a minister with me on an excursion. He makes a fine lightning rod for such excursions as the one we made. The Reverend Twitchell is one of those people filled with patience and endurance, 2 good ingredients for a man traveling with me, so we got along very well together. We went up by rail, and circumstances were such as to bring us back on a raft. In that old town they have not altered a house nor built one in 1,500 years. We went to the inn, and they placed Twitchell and me in a most colossal bedroom, the largest I ever saw or heard of. It was as big as this room. I didn't take much notice of the place. I didn't really get my bearings. I noticed Twitchell got a German bed about 2 feet wide, the kind in which you've got to lie on your edge, because there isn't room to lie on your back. And he was way down south in that big room, and I was way up north at the other end of it, with a regular Sahara in between. We went to bed. Twitchell went to sleep, but then he had his conscience loaded, and it was easy for him to get to sleep. I couldn't sleep. It was one of those torturing kinds of lovely summer nights when you hear various kinds of noises now and then. Off in the southwest of that room, a mouse got busy, and I threw something at it. It pleased the mouse, and it kept on making a noise. But I couldn't stand it, and about 2 o'clock I got up and thought I would give it up and go out in the square where there was one of those tinkling fountains and sit on its brink and dream, full of romance. I got out of bed, and I ought to have lit a candle, but I didn't think of it until it was too late. It was the darkest place that ever was. There has never been darkness any thicker than that. It just lay in cakes. I thought that before dressing I would accumulate my clothes. I couldn't get on the track of that sock. It might have occurred to me that maybe it was in the wash, but I didn't think of that. I went excursioning on my hands and knees. Presently I thought, I'm never going to find it. I'll go back to bed again. That is what I tried to do during the next 3 hours. I had lost the bearings of that bed. I was going in the wrong direction all the time. By and by I came in collision with a chair, and that encouraged me. It seemed to me, as far as I could recollect, there was only a chair here and there and yonder, 5 or 6 of them scattered over this territory, and I thought maybe after I found that chair I might find the next one. Well, I did, and I found another, and another, and another. I kept going around on my hands and knees, having those sudden collisions, and finally, when I banged into another chair, I almost lost my temper. And I raised up, garbed as I was, not for public exhibition, right in front of a mirror 15 or 16 feet high. I hadn't noticed the mirror, didn't know it was there. And when I saw myself in the mirror, I was frightened out of my wits. I don't allow any ghost to bite me, and I took up a chair and smashed at it. 1,000,000 pieces. Then I reflected. That's the way I always do, and it's unprofitable unless a man has had much experience that way and has clear judgment. And I had judgment, and I would have had to pay for that mirror if I hadn't recollected to say it was Twitchell who broke it. Then I got down on my hands and knees and went on another exploring expedition. As far as I could remember, there were 6 chairs in that Oklahoma, and 1 table, a great, big, heavy table, not a good table to hit with your head when rushing madly along. In the course of time, I butted 36 chairs and enough tables to fill the dining room of the Waldorf. It was a hospital for decayed furniture, and it was in a worse condition when I got through with it. I went on, and at last got to a place where I could feel my way up, and there was a shelf. I was delighted. I knew that wasn't in the middle of the room. I was then certain that I had not passed the city limits. I was very careful and pawed along that shelf, and there was a pitcher of water about a foot high, and it was at the head of Twitchell's bed, but I didn't know it. I felt that pitcher going, and I grabbed at it, but it didn't help any and came right down in Twitchell's face and nearly drowned him. But it woke him up. I was grateful to have company on any terms. He lit a match, and there I was way down south when I ought to have been back up yonder. My bed was out of sight, it was so far away. You needed a telescope to find it. Twitchell comforted me, and I scrubbed him off, and we got sociable. I have never found the sock, but the hours of darkness I experienced in the exploration in that room were not empty hours. They served their purpose. The Reverend Joe Twitchell had longer legs than I, and we both wore pedometers on that trip. As I walk in my sleep, I always wore mine to bed with me. When I got up in the morning, I found that I had gained 16 miles on Twitchell. Again, my reflecting after the mirror incident made me remember to tell the landlord that Twitchell had broken it. But that adventure taught me what it is to be blind. That was one of the most serious occasions of my whole life, yet I never can speak of it without somebody thinking it isn't serious. You try it and see how serious it is to be as the blind are, and I was that night. It is now my privilege to present to you Mr. Choate. I don't have to really introduce him. I don't have to praise him or to flatter him. I could say truly that in the 47 years I have been familiarly acquainted with him, he has always been the handsomest man America has ever produced. And I hope and believe he will hold the belt 45 years more. He has served his country ably, faithfully, and brilliantly. He stands at the summit, at the very top, in the esteem and regard of his countrymen, and if I could say one word which would lift him any higher in his countrymen's esteem and affection, I would say that word, whether it was true or not.